We already discussed zones a little bit, but zones are just another way of thinking about your land and thinking about how to arrange things. So if you have your house, this is zone 0 looking down on it. Zone 1 is basically a concentric circle around that. Zone 2, around that. Zone 3, around that. Zone 4 and 5, around that. What's the problem with this, though?
Doesn't follow the
Yeah, this is just, abstract. This is just theory. Like, but it's good to have that as a path to run down your theory, to have a system to go by. If you start thinking about zones, in our climate, in the mountains, you know, we have, here's our house, here's our topo, say, we may have such extreme slope often that zone 1 here, great. Zone 2, 3, 4, and 5, they might be bunched up. You might be at 5 right here. Basically, zone 1 is what you're going to manage the most. You're going to put the most energy. Zone 5, like, you just want it to take care of itself. It's like nature, forest, so those like extremes or polarities. But because we have slope and we may not have a lot of area, you know, our zone 5 could bump up pretty close to zone 1. Does that make sense? So zone 1 is generally only like a 1/4 acre around your house. And you can do it all by hand. You can do it without equipment, and you can do it inexpensively. Zone 1 can supply most of the needs of a family. So that's where you want to put your energy. Modern agriculture spreads it out because we get in a vehicle or a four-wheeler and our chickens could be over here and this could be over here and that could be over here, but then we have so much travel time. And you know, travel time equals money. And if we can position all our major things close to the house, then we're just saving time. Does that make sense? So we're going to group our chores. We're going to group things around our house. This is going to be, zone 1 is going to be your intensive culture. This is where you want your greenhouse, you know, in zone 1. Obviously on your south side. This is where you're going to want your propagation house. I mean, could be the same thing. That's your genesis, your seed, your fertility bank, building that up, and then your propagation house is so important because we want to be self-sufficient, so we need a spot to propagate plants. Propagation house sometimes is a little bit different than a greenhouse. It could be high humidity, in a place that we start cuttings and plants. It could also function as your greenhouse. A lot of times you don't want as high humidity in your greenhouse. So, you know, your workshop where you can make money, your artist studio close, your outside bake oven. What else would you want around your house?
hot tub.
Your hot tub, yep. Yep, your rocket-fired hot tub, yep, that you're firing with the locust droppings that you just pruned off of your trees to support your tree growth. And it's like win, 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 yeah. If you're gonna do animals, you know, you wanna keep the quiet animals near the house. I don't know how many people have lived with animals have taken care of animals daily. Like if you get your animals too close, they're gonna like calling out for you constantly. Like it's a nightmare. Feed me, please, feed me all day long. So anyways, the louder animals could go out to, spread out to a little bit farther zone, maybe where they could forage. Keeping that area open as much as you can for rec areas, play areas, and then like working that edge. So we could stack, our house, this is north, this is south, the sun's here, maybe our greenhouse is connected, maybe not, maybe it's somewhere over here. And then we could work with this whole edge for gardens. And we could even do keyhole plantings. Keyhole, like if this were a garden bed, if I enlarged this area, if this were a garden bed, this is an enlargement, you really can't reach, if you're standing here and this is your garden bed, you really can't reach into a garden bed but so far. You really don't want to step on the soil if you can help it. You can put stepping stones and stuff like that, but keyhole bed is another pattern of nature, and it's basically you're building these little keyholes in here that you could access. So you can walk in here, and then you can access this whole area. So your garden beds could be deeper on the edge, and then you could access that area. The back of this, again, could be planted with trellis. This is looking down on it, just so you guys know. We could plant this out, all kinds of, fruit trees, or things that like to be trellised, and smaller plants, garden plants in this area. And we're kind of like, we're not blocking the sun if this is, our sun is coming here. In this zone 1, you want smaller trees. Shrubs, bushes, brambles, things like that. You don't necessarily, you can have some larger trees out in front to shade, but this is a compact zone and you want compact trees. Zone 2, we talked about that, but spot for chickens, and then that can open up to a bigger area. Zone 2 is also where you may start ramping up your production, your vegetable production, and having bigger plots a little bit farther away from the house. You don't want to make zone 1 too big because you'll never be able to leave it. You'll always be stuck in zone 1. So you want to kind of keep that small. Zone 2 gets a little bit bigger, and you're taking an inventory of how much energy you expend and time to go take care of the daily chores. So you're trying to think about it to where you position everything to where, okay, I'm doing this chore, and then I'm going over here, and I've got this, and this. Check, I've done all that. Instead of this chore here, and then I've got to get in the vehicle and go down the road here to do this, and you know what I'm saying? It's a way of thinking about and saving you time. Zone 3 is a great place for your windbreaks because it's far enough back and it's not going to block a lot of light. And it's a great place for your fire breaks too. You may have nut trees. Zone 3 gets larger. Your trees in scale can be larger. If you have your chickens or out in zone 2, opening up to zone 3, that's where you want these forage systems, food forest and such, that your chickens can get into, but you want to protect your trees with cages or fencing, or sometimes you'll do strip fencing and have an offset row of trees, something like that. And then it's, you start getting into your, if you have pasture, you can graze your animals, That's like a little bit farther away from your house. But, you know, this is all just like we were talking about, just theoretical. Your zone 3 may bend in close to zone 2 or even zone 1 potentially. You may have a milking barn that comes in close to zone 1, you know, where you can bring the animals in and milk or something like that. Zone 4, we're getting farther out. You know, you see the number of items on each one is kind of dwindling. Like, it's broader, but there's less, like, little fine, high-end production stuff that you have. So it's like your long-term planning, your timbers, your fuel, and zone 5 is just like, you know, the farthest place away. It's uncultivated. It's your natural spot. You want the wildness, and you're protecting that. So what we've got so far is we have our scale of permanence, like the most permanent things that we have to work with. We're overlaying that with our zones in our head, and then we're thinking about sector planning. So sector planning is another one of these weird abstract things, but it's super handy. So a sector plan is basically you're just mapping the energies coming in to could be to your whole farmstead, your homestead. It could be to your greenhouse. It could be to your house. But it's the energies coming in to your house, to whatever you're mapping. So if it's our house, right, a sector plan is just going to be an overlay. So at this point, we've got several overlays. So we've got our topo, whatever that may be, right? That we picked up off of the geographical information system for free. We've already figured out where we want to put our house, and now we want to work with the energies coming into it. So a sector plan is basically another circle on top. And what we're trying to do with our sector plan is we're trying to map, here again is north, and this is south. And so you can imagine the sun is going to be shining like this into our house. We're looking down on it. So summer sun angle may be like this, something like that. So the sun is here, and it's shining all the way here before it goes behind the hills. The winter sun angle may be like this. So it's here, and then you lose the sun because it may dip behind a mountain or something. So you need to map that out. So the most important thing, summer sun angle, winter sun angle. And then prevailing wind is usually in this area, like I said, that is northwest, so it's like something like this. Winter wind is coming in that way. A lot of times, summer wind is coming in that way. So we have winter wind and summer wind coming in that way, right? Other things you can map are your views. So if you're from your house, you may have, I don't know, neighbors. You could have neighbors that you don't want to see. So you're mapping, this is the energy coming in and what you're seeing. So then you're mapping what you don't want to see here, right? Or your really good views, you're over here, you're looking at Mount Pisgah this way. So this is an awesome view, right? So this gives you information about how to plan for that. So if this is your summer sun angle, here, you know, we can start to think about things like bedrooms could be here, possibly. You know, you're getting that morning light. Or solar gain is going to be here and over here in the west in the summer. Right? So this is just going to tell you what you want to position and what you don't. I mean, you wouldn't want to position, say, a bunch of evergreens right here. That's going to block your sun angle. Or maybe you do, actually, because that's the summer. So maybe you want evergreens there. But maybe in the winter, you're not going to put evergreens here. You know, maybe this is where you want deciduous. You know, so this is going to be your solar gain, and this is where we have our deciduous trees out in front. It's hotter, you know, by the end of the day, that south-facing sun is hotter, so maybe we want to plant some deciduous trees here, right? Maybe we want to block this northwest wind with a windbreak. Maybe because we have this, we want to block this with trees. So it's another way of looking at another overlay. Any other questions or any thoughts on that? Or
Can you talk briefly about fire corridor?
now that's something that takes kind of like long-term planning and really possibly, you know, talking to the old timers in the area. But we used to have a lot more fires around here. And it's often fires come from a certain direction. Fires are usually summer. Not always, but around here it's like the end of summer, everything's dry. So you're going to have a fire corridor if it's super dry and you have a fire and here's your summer wind, fire can spread like this. So this would be the corridor where fire goes. So there you would want to maybe you would want to block that, or you'd want to be able to flood that area with some, like a swale or something down slope here. You know, maybe you have a pond up here, and then fire season you've got your swale, and then you could flood that potentially. Or you may want to have a break in vegetation, that area. It hasn't been a problem in this area too bad recently, but you know, major potential. We could just get a dry year and then we could get fires. You know, this is beyond what most people, this is like inconvenient to think like this. But if we did think like this and we did plan like this, you know, we can position things to maybe avoid those tragedies by being able to flood it, by breaking back, you know, having a break in your vegetation, having a fire road, different things like that. You know, often on a piece of land, animals like to travel. There's a corridor on a piece of land that wild animals like to travel. And you don't want to start fencing all that off without thinking about that. You want to leave a corridor for nature, you know, for wildness, for your animals. Yes?
Speaking of that, the deer that come through my yard every day.
Yeah.
And, you know, I want to plant things, so and I know it's not exactly in your design discussion, but any tips for keeping deer and blueberries at the same time?
Well, design. Yeah.
I mean, I know where they normally go. I have a dog that chases them away.
Yeah. So if you had your, I don't know your piece of land, obviously. I don't know where you planted your blueberries. But if you had them around the house. Okay. So if you had them in that zone 1. Yeah, then you could fence around zone 1 or a section of zone 1.
So that's what it takes is fencing.
Well, fencing or repellent or, yeah, active dog constantly, which can be annoying. So that's our sector planning. So that's just, we're adding another layer on top of that, and that's super important. We don't normally think like that, but that's super important. So that's all I got to say about sector planning. I hope it's not too abstract for you and that you could use it. It's really a great tool. So basically, when you're designing your homestead, you got to get a plan. You don't need to rush into it, but you do need to start with the end in mind. And that's where clear goals, mission statement, knowing where you're going, all that is super important. If we're just like, I want to get a homestead, and we just start, I want to do this, I want to get chickens, that, you end up just none of your systems will function together. Then you're going to be pulling your hair out. So you get a plan, you're thinking about the end in mind. What is the ultimate, the highest, the best use, the highest value added, the highest potential that I could do on this land? So it's the end in mind. And then you'll never have all the information that you need. And what you're going to do, because you're an eternal student, is you're going to constantly learn, and you're going to keep adding information to it. So you're going to improve your plan. You may change your plan. You may modify your plan. You know, a lot of times that's why people say, you know, go to a piece of land, live on it, or walk it every day for a year to start to map it and figure it out in your head. I don't know if you need to do that. You know, it's not a bad thing, but a lot of times, like practicality, like we've got to get things going. Time is our major resource here. So if we start broad, we start with this mainframe planning, and then like it's really important to start with manageable steps. You break your plan down to manageable steps that you can complete the whole manageable step potentially before moving on to the next one. Scott and Helen Nearing, I don't know if you all have ever read The Good Life. I love the way, before they did a project, they would get all their materials on site. And they would have a whole plan, and the way they did things was super labor intensive. So if they were going to build a rock wall, they would get all their rocks on site. Where me, I'm like, let's build a rock wall, and you go, you know, you're pecking away at it, and then you're like, you're just inefficient. So you can get really discouraged homesteading. And if you start so broad and you try to do too much at once, you can get discouraged and overwhelmed. But if you have this plan that you can keep referring back to, that's based on missions and goals and higher principles, then you start with steps. It's just one step after the next. And it's just breaking it down into manageable pieces. You can just bite it off in manageable pieces, and then you're making progress, and it doesn't feel so daunting. You know, hit up the GIS. It's free. You can get all kinds of information on it. You can do a lot of your planning on GIS. You can do there's markup tools, there's measuring tools, there's topos, there's floodplain maps. There's all kinds of information on that. Google Earth is not too bad. It's free also. It's a little weird to look at because it's at an angle, where a GIS is usually an aerial photo. And then if you have a drone, get drones. But if you don't have anything, just do not get hung up in waiting for the perfect solution to get started. Just get started. Yeah, learn how to use the layers on the markup and the markup tools on GIS. And then from the GIS, you could just print out your property plot, and you can use the markup tools on it, and you could just start your plan. And you could print off several, and then you could just play with it. And then you start doing these overlays. Where's my water? With the scale of permanence, I'm going down the water. Where's the best place for my house? Where's the best place for my greenhouse? So you have all that, and then you're thinking your zones, your zone planning. and then you're going to overlay your sector plan on top of that. And so if you print out several, then you could lay out your sector plan on top of that, and then you could have one with zones, one with sectors, and something to play with. If you wanted to get more technical, you can do all this you can do it on a CAD program. There's Concept, which is an app, SketchUp, Illustrator, which is another program, but if nothing else, just hand draw it. We don't have to make this perfect. We don't want perfect to be the enemy of the good. Like, we need to make headway with this. So if you're doing this for a client, yeah, you may want to go to that next level and make this your business and then present things more professional. But for what you're doing, that's all you need. So that's about it. I mean, that's basically the most useful sections of the permaculture design course. This is where to start. Start with those, 8 or 9, the most permanent pieces on your plan, and just start overlaying. Any questions, comments?
Do you have books you'd recommend?
The Permaculture Design Manual, Pattern Language.
You said something about sergeant fly before. What is that?
What? Soldier fly?
Soldier fly, was it? Oh, I think
Yeah.
so. Sorry. Okay. Yeah, what is that?
It's basically, it looks like a wasp that lays larvae. It's a fly that does a lot of amazing things, will outcompete flies, and will decompose rotting food real fast. And then they have these little larvae. So the fly lays eggs, turns into larvae. They grow really fast. They transform the waste product, and then people have been using them. You can kind of map what they do, and at the end of their cycle, they want to get outside, so they go to the light, and you could actually have a little ramp from your bin, and they'll fall down, and you can collect them. They're high in protein and fat, and there's a lot of nutrients. Yeah, they're pretty cool. Thanks for showing up. It was cloudy, rainy, windy, but we did it.